Residential tech talk. Residential tech.
Welcome to Residential Tech Talks. I'm Jeremy Glowacki, Executive Editor of Residential Tech Today. And in this episode, I'm joined by CEDIA's Senior Vice President of Industry Engagement, Giles Sutton, a guy whose role in the industry is basically meant to be the exact opposite of social distancing. When times are normal, it's quite common to see Facebook updates from Giles showing very long lines on a map from origin to destination and back. Mr. Sutton, how are you managing these days, staying off of cross-country and transatlantic flights and locking down at home, where I believe is Los Angeles these days, correct?
That's right. Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks so much for the introduction. Thrilled to be here, and thanks so much for your interest in some of our initiatives at the moment. Actually, you're right. It has been for many a bit of an adjustment. I mean, as you alluded to, I've been used to, I guess you could say, a hybrid work approach, working in the office. In Indianapolis, as well as working from home and also traveling a lot. So I guess it's not been such a difficult transition for me, other than obviously the stay-at-home order that's obviously been in place here in California for some time. And everything in California seems to have happened a bit quicker than other places in the US and other countries as well. But other than a lot of very, very early morning calls at 5 a.m., it's not been that much of a challenge. But it's been interesting to see how integrators have coped in this local market in LA. And I just myself seeing that the work is continuing. I'm looking at a building site across the street right now, and there are people working on it. So that is encouraging as well. But yeah, for myself, it's been as good as I could hope. And I think a lot of manufacturers have found that as well.
And what part of town are you in there in Los Angeles?
So I'm in Hollywood, actually, pretty central.
Okay, sure.
In the thick of it. I think actually one of the highest areas for COVID, actually. So that is a little alarming, I would say, but in particular the neighborhood I'm in. But I thankfully have managed to avoid any of that.
Are you in, I'm a little bit familiar with Hollywood. I spent a summer there, an internship in college, and I got to, actually work in that area. But are you in a walkable community where you get out and see people, or how secluded do you feel right now?
Absolutely. And that was one of the reasons that I chose this neighborhood, really. Obviously, coming from London, which is very walkable. I wanted to be really in an area where I could walk around. I also chose the area, actually, to be honest, part of my role is also outreach to designers and architects as well. So, there's a lot of design practices in this area. So that was another reason why it made sense to be here, as well as it obviously being our California as a whole being our largest membership region in the US. So, and I don't think CEDIA's ever really had someone planted in California. So that, as you say, the original plan was more engagement, but things are a little bit different at the moment.
Yeah. So are you getting on, you said the early morning calls, are you talking to headquarters? Or are you getting on calls with membership and trying to stay in that role in engagement?
Absolutely. So I have regular calls with manufacturer members all the time. So that happens every week. A lot of calls with my team and obviously HQ, as we've been, and particularly in the last couple of weeks where there's been a lot of activity. We've had, there's been almost back-to-back calls in organizing the CEDIA Strong campaign. So yeah, there's it's a mix, really. But generally, because we're always dealing with the East Coast or with Europe, they tend to start very early in the morning. So most of my days definitely start around 6 or sometimes even earlier.
Sure. I mean, it's a global association for sure. And that's one of the great things about your position, and you being in that role, is that you have that global connection automatically being from London. So yeah, you're talking everywhere. So it's there's no sleeping in when you're on the West Coast in the US, is there?
There is not. No, there is a time when the East Coast, it sort of slows down. in the afternoon. So you do tend to have a bit of your evenings back, which is quite nice here. But yeah, certainly you can't be afraid of the early mornings here. It's handy as well for obviously coordinating with our the Australian market as well. With them, as you said, we are a global association. We have members there. It's more challenging from the East Coast. So it's good from that perspective as well.
Well, I want to talk about the CEDIA initiatives, but one of the things we were just chatting about before we went live here was that the last time I saw you in person was at the ProSource Summit, the buying group meeting in Las Vegas, and it was really just on the cusp of the coronavirus quarantine. I think the decision could have been made to keep us all at home, but they just kind of, not to, no pun intended with Vegas, but they rolled the dice on the timing. And I think right at the end, we were kind of thinking we shouldn't be here. We ought to get home and get safe. And then a lot of cancellations began, and it seemed like the obvious thing to do. But in hindsight, that was easier, said than done. I know that CEDIA jumped right on that as well soon after with the different regional events. I know that you're probably in conversations about virtual opportunities, but before maybe diving into what kind of concepts we might be seeing in the future, what about some of the free initiatives that are there for the membership in terms of training? And then what's CEDIA Strong all about?
So you're absolutely right. I think it's amazing, isn't it? If you think back, a month, what a difference a month makes. A month ago, this weekend just gone by was the ProSource Summit in Las Vegas, and I recall going to the airport, and it was really just when nerves were starting to set in. Events were starting to be cancelled. I think we'd cancelled, or at least rescheduled a couple. And you're right. Since then, really, it's just been every day we've seen more and more restrictions and things coming in, and it's crazy to think where we are right now. We I feel acted very fast in terms of changing the timeline on our events, pushing them back. And also in terms of what we immediately came together as a team, a management team, and actually put together a whole roadmap for resources that we felt would be of benefit to our members, and because everything was changing really on a daily basis, and also it was very different across the world, and even regionally, as we've seen within the US, some stay-at-home orders have only really come into place, I think, last week even. So we wanted to make sure that it was content that could be sort of widely of use, not just something that was maybe specific to certain areas. So, we immediately doubled the number of podcasts, and we decided to do 2 webinars a week, and we developed a COVID resource center as well, straight from the get-go. So we're very quick to do that, and really trying to amalgamate all of these different sources of information that we were getting. But it really was being updated all the time, even on an hourly basis at one point. And the webinars have been hugely successful. I mean, I know, Jeremy, you've attended a few. We've seen hundreds of people attending these, and that's been really, really encouraging. And we've tried to keep them in a range of different subjects, survival tactics and different strategies that integrators can apply at this time. And also reflecting back on obviously 2008, it's easy to draw a parallel with certainly the lack of business, lack of sales is a way we can probably draw a parallel. There's a lot of elements to COVID that are very different, of course, in terms of actually being able to operate. But I think we've done everything we can, along with the CEDIA Strong campaign, to really show that we're there for the industry, and really trying to expand on that sense of community that has really run through this industry from day one, and run through the association since it began. Newcomers into this industry, and CEDIA has an interesting kind of diverse group of employees from different backgrounds, and especially as we expanded our education team. The interesting thing I think a lot of people have noticed is that community, is that bond is that, and you can see it everywhere, not just in person events, but online, in blog, in group chats and things, and forums and things like that. We're an industry that loves sharing all the time. So at times like this, I think it's fantastic to see how everyone rallies around each other, and shares their experience. And I think we really wanted to be at the center of all of that, and that's really how CEDIA Strong came about.
That's great. Good to hear. I want to continue that conversation, but before we go on with CEDIA's Giles Sutton, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Residential Tech Talks. If you haven't already, be sure to check out our previous episodes. Real quick, this episode is sponsored by Dish, the best in-home viewing experience for your budget. Dish has been ranked #1 in customer satisfaction by J.D. Power for the second year in a row. Visit www.dish.com for more.
Welcome back. We're talking with CEDIA's Giles Sutton. Giles, as you talk to the membership in these social engagement moments, virtual moments, even Zoom calls if you are doing those, can you summarize a little bit about what you're hearing? I know regionally things change by the day, as you were saying. Is there any kind of common thread about the types of work our membership out there is doing? Are they continuing to see projects underway, or are they mostly just doing service right now because of limitations to getting in homes and even businesses?
It is a real mix. We do have a diverse membership, as you rightly pointed out. We have members, integrators around the world, and we also have manufacturers as well. So certainly on the integrator side, there are definitely differences. If we look at, for example, what's happening in the UK. A lot of integrators I've seen, it's made more financial sense to actually furlough staff and actually suspend, a large part of operations, because there is the government-backed furlough scheme. Elsewhere, I've seen that integrators have attempted to carry on some level of business. Particularly if there are projects that are currently on site. So, I mean, if there are projects that are in the sort of pre-wire sort of stage, then, like I said, there's a project over the road from me. I can see that there are builders on site, and there are other projects in the local area where there are people working on site. So, but I think clearly this is not a time where people want work to be carried out in their homes for obvious health reasons. There's definitely still a need for service. I mean, just like me, I've actually, I've used someone to come in and repair my water heater. We are still there's still the need. We're in an essential service when it comes to homeowners. We provide networking, and and when so many people are now working from home, it's essential that all of those networks stay up and running at all times. So there are still opportunities, but I think the sense I'm getting is that sales are certainly very slow right now. Work is carrying on site where possible, but a lot of integrators are looking at any kind of government subsidies or grants or loans that they can get at this point to try and help them through this, what is clearly a very, very difficult period. Because of the restrictions in actually being able to carry out work, which is so different to what we saw in 2008. From a manufacturer perspective, definitely, the conversations I'm having with a lot of, very high-profile manufacturers is that people are still optimistic about coming out of this. Obviously, seeing that there are a lot of cutbacks in terms of expenditure right now, for sure. But a lot of manufacturers reflect back on 2008. We've had also an incredible period here in the US of growth. Let's not forget, over the past few years, the industry has had a boom since, things have been pretty good. So a lot of manufacturers, you would hope are in a sort of a strong sort of financial situation, and have made sort of the fiscal procedures to ensure that they can sort of survive a period like this. But but everyone is clearly concerned about how long this is going to last and how quickly we can come out of this. But I do also try and reflect back to my time as an integrator. And, I had some, the time coming out of a recession is always such an adrenaline rush, because when it comes back and the projects start coming in, that's what you need to really focus on, is that this is not going to go on forever. We're going to be back. People still need technology. They need technology. And we can't stop innovation around technology. So we just have to, that's really the light at the end of the tunnel, I'd say.
Yeah, the key words that I remember picking up when we did the AV summit last week, the virtual summit that AV Nation put on, were pent-up demand. And I think that that's something that didn't exist after the recession. The problem will be just the folks who have been maybe affected as a business owner themselves, clients who are business owners, and that's a lot of who our clients are in this industry, whether they are just scrambling to kind of get their businesses back on track before they start investing in their homes again and other projects. So, it's just a big question mark of when that's going to be and how far out it is and what the damage is to the economy at that point. But obviously, yes, you're right. This is a business that is technology is the right place to be for a business to pick back up pretty quickly, especially as we've all seen what our homes are lacking. I'm fortunate to have a pretty good setup, but even now, I've not been a podcaster for very long, and now I want a better setup for my podcast, so that's something. And even with my network, we had a network outage here in our, I'm in Carmel outside of Indianapolis, and there was a huge AT&T outage last week, and I have everything bundled in my cell and phone and network. Everything is AT&T. And I just said right then, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to get the new fiber company that's come in here that I was reluctant to go with, just to have a separate service, because my next door neighbors had no network outage, and their cell phones, I think, were out, but my wife would not let me have technicians in the house, no matter what I told her about their safety procedures. So that's on hold. So I understand, the challenges with clients for sure.
You're absolutely right. I think that the notion of pent up demand and the focus on the home that is happening right now. It's early to speculate, but you've given a great example, and an example I would give is I moved to LA just before all this happened, right before it happened, and I didn't manage to get motorized shades put into the bedroom. Now is not the time that I'm going to do that. But that project, in inverted commas, is still a project that needs to happen, right? And actually, if anything, being in the house this much, it's made me realize how necessary that is. So you would hope that when things do come back, even though budgets may be revised, it may I may not be looking at the most lavish motorized blind fabric, but not that I may have been anyway. But because the point I'm making is maybe people will be fine tuning budgets a little bit, but the need ultimately will hopefully still be there when we come out of this. And that's something I really hope we look forward to soon.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to end it on that note, because it's a positive one, and it's easy to get back into the negative stuff if you talk too long these days. So I really appreciate your time, Giles, and I'll let you get back to your engagement with the industry. We appreciate what you do, and it was great talking to you. If anyone wants to reach out to you or has interest in becoming a CEDIA member who's not already a member, what would your directions be for guiding them through?
Well, I'm always open to anyone reaching out to me if they have any particular questions or concerns, or even suggestions if people think there's things that we could be doing right now. So please do. You can reach out to me personally at gsutton, SUTTON, at cedia.org. Or if just interested in joining CEDIA, just email member@cedia.org. So, but thank you very much, Jeremy. It's been a pleasure to be on here today.
Very good. Great talking to you, Giles. Talk to you later. We really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining us today on Residential Tech Talks. Have a great day.
residential
Smart
tech
device.
event, lighting
Device.
specialist to residential to mass
Home automation. Smart device. Home or smart.